what are the opportunities, what are the opportunities in the life sciences sectors for the fresh graduates, the graduates who have completed the either graduation or a post-graduation in the last 2 to 3 years, 3 years preferably, so that you can identify the relevant career opportunities for yourself. And then at Cliniminds, we offer the specialized programs in these areas in clinical research, pharmacovigilance, data management, regulatory affairs, and all these areas. So today we will talk about broadly how there are career opportunities in this industry, have emerged in the last about 20 years or so. And today, India is at a stage where the global companies have very strong presence, and more global companies are entering into India. The structure would be, I'll be taking about 25 to 30 minutes to talk broadly about all the sectors, and then we have invited our two senior faculty members who are going to talk about Mr. Gaurav Grover, who heads the pharmacovigilance at Cliniminds. He will be talking about the pharmacovigilance in detail, and then subsequently we would we have a speaker, Ankita. Ankita is a clinical data management professional with a leading multinational company. She will be talking about the data management overview, what data management is, what do we do in CDM, what are the career opportunities for you. So let's begin briefly with the opportunities. So life sciences sector, when we say the life sciences sector is a part of the broader umbrella term, life sciences, but it includes the pharmaceutical business, life sciences sector, consulting companies, IT companies, which provide the services to the pharmaceutical industry and health sciences industry. So life sciences sector is a broad umbrella term, basically. And for you, the opportunities in the life sciences sector means you will get to work either in hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, contract research companies, which are the CROs, life sciences consulting firms like Accenture, TCS, life sciences sector IT companies, which overlap with the consulting firms, but there are specialized IT consulting companies which support the pharma sector. And then there are specialized companies in data management, specialized companies in pharmacovigilance domain, companies in regulatory services domain. So those are the specialized companies. So it's a fairly broad spectrum of opportunities and the broad spectrum of roles today. So when you talk about the roles today, the roles could start as a clinical research coordinator, as a clinical trial assistant, as a drug safety associate. If you have done pharmacovigilance, then drug safety associate, pharmacovigilance associate role. You have a clinical data management roles. You have the ETMF roles in the regulatory, regulatory space. There is a ETMF function. There are business development role, very interesting job roles today, where you get involved into the business development activities of the big CROs or the big contract research or life sciences consulting firms. You get into the bioequivalence, bioavailability positions. So you have a fairly broad spectrum today when we touch upon the life sciences sector. Hence, our programs have been designed accordingly. So we will now talk briefly about the clinical trials. What are the opportunities? What are the clinical trials? So clinical trials is the part of the drug development industry. When we want to bring out the new drug to the market, we need to conduct extensive clinical trial studies. And this entire drug development process starts as early as into the laboratory stage, where we identify the thousands of molecules and zero down to the molecules which are likely to work as a target molecule for the target disease. And then we conduct the preclinical studies. The preclinical studies, as all of you are aware, are the animal studies, where we conduct the preclinical studies in the animal models to check the safety and the efficacy of the drug in the animal models. And then we, whatever the data we get, whether it's the safety and the efficacy of the drug, we take that data to the regulator and ask for the IND, investigational new drug, which is the first time you want to conduct these studies in the human beings. So we start phase 0, where we do the micro dosing studies to check how the drug absorption is happening. So we want to continue to invest into the drug at the phase 1. So phase 0 microdosing studies, and then we go to the phase 1 with the limited population. We see the safety of the drug at the phase 1 level to ensure the routes of administration, how the drug is absorbing. And then we move to the larger phase of the phase 2, where we do now the disease oriented. Here we have the population, our target population is a disease population, where we will conduct the clinical trial in the disease population. And we do the various kinds of studies, including safety studies, continue to do the safety studies of the drug, because the safety over efficacy is our motto. So we will continue to do the safety studies. We will see how drug is functioning in the target population and the disease population. We check the biases. We ensure that there are no study biases. So we do the blinding study, double arm studies. So we do the various kind of studies at the phase 2. And then if we get the positive data of the safety and efficacy both, we move to the phase 3, which is a much larger phase, where we conduct the studies in the thousands of patients worldwide, in multi-centric markets and multi-centric population. And then we conduct the various studies in this space. So we will carry out the studies at the larger phase, and once we get the safety and efficacy data, we then apply for the new drug application to the regulator. That's where we bring the drug to the market. So on the basis of your data from the lab, preclinical, all the phases of clinical trials, we apply as a new drug application to the regulator to seek the approval, marketing approval. And once we get the marketing approval, then we go into the post-marketing phase, which is the post-marketing pharmacovigilance. Or the regulator may ask you to carry on the studies, more safety studies, and then perhaps seek the approval again to market the drug. But once you receive the approval, you go into the post-marketing safety space. So post-marketing safety is the pharmacovigilance. You were doing the pharmacovigilance during the clinical trials also, but there you had a limited population. You had a population where you were not aware of how the drug is going to behave in the larger population groups. So you had 5,000, 4,000 patients. You knew what kind of drugs of the treatments they take, what food they eat, what lifestyle they have, who are their physicians. You know everything about the patients who participate in the clinical trials. But now your drug is going to the millions of patients worldwide. You don't know how it is going to behave in the millions of patients, how it will behave with different category of drugs, how it will behave in the different foods groups. So you have very little information. So hence the post-marketing pharmacovigilance come to, reality. And this is not the social responsibility of the company anymore. This is the regulatory responsibility of the company, where you have to conduct extensive post-marketing safety studies. And that's where we will go into a little more detail with Gaurav sir, who will take this session in detail about pharmacovigilance. One of the important areas for the people who join this sector, the candidates who join this sector, is the clinical data management. So clinical data management is a part of the clinical trial process. In the clinical data management, you learn how you collect the data from the sites, from the various, labs, your vendors, how to integrate this data in the form of the ECRF, how you will, analyze this data. And that's where the role of clinical data management comes, very critical role. And it's in a career-wise, it's a completely career pathway. And I will not repeat a lot of this information here. My colleague Ankita would take you through the clinical data management process in detail. So one more area which is very interesting from this group point of view is the regulatory affairs, is the pharmaceutical and medical device regulatory affairs area. So pharmaceutical industry is highly regulated industry. So this is the sector which, from a preclinical stage to the clinical trial stage to marketing of the drug, post-marketing, the pricing regulations, packaging regulations, transportation regulations, the entire sector actually works on the regulations. So that's where the importance of learning the regulatory affairs is there. So you will learn in this program how we ensure we follow the entire regulatory process, let's say for clinical trials, how we file applications for the various stages for the clinical trial phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, how we apply for the post-marketing, NDA application to apply for the marketing of the drug, how we go into the post-marketing pharmacovigilance activities, how we work on the export markets. India is a large country from where we export the drugs, and large number of countries worldwide, they import the drugs. And how we work on this specialized documentation, how the common technical document dossier submissions work in the international market. Extremely important role for the upcoming, graduates and the postgraduates. This is the another area which we are going to cover in this program. The other areas are now emerging slowly are the pharmaceutical business analytics. This is the sector which is now growing, which is the sector like clinical trials, pharmacovigilance, data management. All these sectors started about 20, 25 years back almost in India, but now in the last about 8 to 10 years, about a decade back, another area which has emerged is the pharmaceutical business analytics. This is the area where you learn how the pharmaceutical companies take important scientific and business decisions, how they identify the molecule, which molecule to invest. So in clinical trials, you come to the stage where you have broadly identified the therapeutic area, you have largely identified the series of molecule which may work. But this sector of pharma business analytics goes few steps before that. Now, company wants to invest into a new cancer drug. How do they make a decision that how do we, spend, let's say, $2 billion, let's over 16,000 crores of rupees need to be invested into the new drug. How do we take this important decision? So we will see what are the gaps in the market, which are the therapeutic areas currently in the oncology. Let's talk about oncology. What are the current gaps? Which are the types of cancers which are currently not being properly treated or not being treated? Which are the competitors we have? Who are the larger competition we have? Companies which are already into the similar molecule. What kind of a drugs they are making? What is their price? Which are their markets? What is the regulatory environment they are currently facing? So we do the complete analysis, disease epidemiology, and then we do models like forecast models. So let's say if we get into the clinical trials today, we patent our drug today, and in the 10 years, 11 years time, we are able to launch this cancer drug. What will be my market at that time? So you need to assess. That's called the forecasting. We forecast how the drug, the market size of the drug will be at that time. Who will be the competitors at that time? So all those things you forecast actually. So there are a lot of areas within this. There's a health economics outcomes research where we study the pharmacoeconomics. We see how the pricing model functions in the drug, how we price the drug, how we get the insurance reimbursements pricing models. So let's say your drug is expensive and the therapy cost is $50,000 or $100,000. How much insurance companies are going to pay for that? So there are models we prepare with the help of the health economics outcomes research. In the sales analytics, we work in areas like we are marketing the drug, we are selling the drug worldwide. How effective is our sales force? How effective is our marketing? How much we are, sales we are able to get with the help of our sales force. So in this, you do not learn to sales and marketing, but you will be analyzing how each and every sales professional is contributing into the growth of the company, how much effective they are in meeting their doctors and generating more prescriptions for the drugs, because all this data is very critical for the company to build the future strategies. But also they want to learn, they want to pay incentives to the sales force. So how do they pay the incentives to the sales force unless they have the proper sales analytics data? That's where the roles of the sales analytics come into play. Then there are other areas like patient level data analytics. I'm a pharmaceutical company. I want to understand how is my patient working with the therapy. So let's say we have a cancer drug for the head and neck cancer. How the entire journey of the patient from the first time they come to OPD, how we track their journey during the entire treatment, whether the diagnostic side, hospitalization side, the therapy which they are taking, how this is all functioning. Because once you have this kind of a data at the patient level analytics data, only then you can build the future drugs. Otherwise, as a company, you will always be in dark that how your drug is actually or the therapy is functioning. And that's where we go into detail of the patient level analytics. Last but not least, the primary research. This is a very important area when you go first time into the market. You want to identify how the pharmaceutical companies, how the drug companies, actually the medical doctors are, I'm giving one example only, are prescribing your drug, or not your drug, but let's say we want to launch a new drug in head and neck cancer domain. What are the current trends we want to identify? how the doctors are treating their patients, what kind of drugs or the procedures they are using. So we want to analyze this information. We cannot analyze this information with the only help of the secondary data, which is available through the secondary research. Here we are going to conduct the primary research. And the primary research is a very critical function when you want to take the important business and scientific decision, because you want to see how the doctors are prescribing or treating their patients, what are the outcomes of those treatments. So you design very specialized questionnaires, very scientifically designed questionnaires, where you will design along with the experts, medical experts, design these questionnaires, validate these questionnaires. You will uh, run these questionnaires with the physicians or your target segment, get all this information, then scientifically analyze this information using various statistical models or Excel-based models. You will analyze this data. So this is all the pharma business analytics, where you begin your career as a junior business analyst. Once you complete this kind of a program, you work as a junior business analyst. So, and then you grow. There's large number of opportunities as you grow into this sector. Then last but not least, very briefly, we will talk about the medical and scientific writing. A lot of students, they talk about medical writing career. Medical writing career is a good area. However, before you get into the medical and scientific writing, it is important that you acquire some experience into the one area, whether it's a pharmacovigilance or clinical trials or regulatory space, and then look into the opportunity of the medical and scientific writing. Medical and scientific writing is a very broad umbrella term. In the medical and scientific writing, there are several types of writings involved. The writing from a regulatory point of view, pharmaceutical, medical device regulatory, where you write the various kind of common technical documents, you prepare the dossiers, you write various technical and the regulatory documents for the various regulatory submissions. You work, the medical writing is highly utilized by the pharmaceutical companies for the marketing purposes. Medical marketing means you are marketing the drug to the doctors. You need to develop scientific literature, medical literature for the doctors to read that information about that therapeutic area and about that drug. You write the patient literature, you write the publications. That's a very important area under the medical writing domain, is the publication writing. All of you must be reading medical journals. So you see a lot of these international journals where people, scientists, medical doctors, pharmacists, uh, scientists, they write the publications, in the journals. So how to write a scientifically a publication in a scientific journal? What kind of processes are there? How you do the biostatistically analyze the data you have? How will you write various conventions, English grammar point of view? So a lot of skill sets are required to write a good medical, document or a scientific journal or a medical marketing document. So that's what you will learn. But before you get into the medical writing domain, always acquire one specialized area and then look into this career opportunity. There's other areas like statistical programming, preferred, where you become a statistical programmer, SAS programmer, ideal for the students who have some statistical, mathematical programming understanding before they get into the program. It's the program which is the pure software programming career. It is not nothing to do with the uh, pharmacovigilance or clinical trials. Yes, in clinical trials, we use this statistical analysis. In order to do the statistical analysis, you need to use the biostatistician who will build your biostatistical models for the clinical trials. And then you require statistical programmers who will do the complete statistical analysis of the clinical trial data. And computer programming, statistical programming is the most important skill you need to have, which you learn as a part of the program. But if you do not have the inclination toward the mathematics or towards the computer programming, then this is not the right choice career for the life sciences students. So life sciences students with interest in maths, for good knowledge of maths, and some statistical or some programming understanding or interest in computer programming should look into this particular sector of a statistical programming. What I've seen in the last several years is a lot of pharmacy or the MSc students get into this sector because some of their friends have done it, and then they find very hard to find their first job. It's very important that you choose your course very carefully, choose the course what suits your profile. So we will, take all the questions at the end about the various programs, about the, career opportunities, how you will undergo this program. The program, my colleague Rajesh will and Vinayak will take you through the program brochure at the end. And now I invite, we'll take all the questions at the end, please. You can post your questions in the chat box, or at the end, we will unmute and you can ask all your questions. So I'll ask now, request Gaurav sir to please come and take your introductory session on pharmacovigilance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. I think, can I start to share the screen? Just give me a moment. Okay. I'm trying to share. Just let me know when you are able to see the screen.
Yes, Gaurav sir will let you know. Yeah, can see.
Is it visible?
Yes, we can see. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vinayak, for letting me know. Okay. So I welcome all of you again on this quick short session, I would say, on pharmacovigilance. Again, we've gone through a lot of content as introduced earlier to you. Life sciences sector is a growing sector, and with clinical research, we've all faced the pandemic in the past, and we all know how new requirements for medicines have come up, how new drugs have been developed by the companies. Yes, and so that is one of the reasons why we need to have again, because of the reduced timeline or the shortened timeline during the pandemic, many of these new molecules or the drugs that we know, the vaccines as we know, were introduced as an emergency product, and the timelines for development or the clinical research time which was spent was reduced. And again, as we have discussed earlier, because in the clinical trials you don't have with the reduced timeline, you don't have much patients already which are studied in a clinical trial. The maximum in a randomized trial that you can go for a phase 3 study would be somewhere close to 1,000 patients. Very rare situation, it will never happen. Yes, so usually it's around 100 patients or so that you will have in a clinical trial. Imagine for a rare event or an adverse reaction with a drug, say 1 in 10,000, you can't observe it in a clinical trial. And more so in case of products like vaccines, which have been developed as an emergency condition, there was no time for looking at these adverse effects or the side effects. So what we are going to look at again in our session today on pharmacovigilance, we are focusing on the medicines or the drug safety, right? Okay, so like I said, pharmacovigilance right now is the best option, a career option for most life sciences graduates, people from pharma background, from medicine. This is a most suitable option, again, because like I said, there is a requirement for newer drugs, and with newer drugs, the study that you need to do on the adverse events or the reactions is something that you will do in pharmacovigilance. So again, the career ahead, when we talk of pharmacovigilance career ahead, you have a lot of options, and we'll be looking at those in our session today. What are the other options available within pharmacovigilance? You have several roles which are required, so we'll be looking at those. Okay, again, I always start the session with this quote from Dr. Vladimir Lefikin. He had said this in a Geneva conference, that dying from a disease is sometimes unavoidable, but then dying from a medicine is unacceptable. So this is something that we all have as part of the medicine industry or the pharma industry, ensure that the medicines are not a cause for death. So initially, when COVID-19 vaccination was introduced, again, it was found that the COVID-19 vaccination had its own reports of deaths with blood clot related issues. Many of you would have read it, and because of this, many authorities in Europe had stopped the usage. Initially, they stopped the use of the vaccine because people were dying, and we can't accept someone dying from a medicine. Yes, so that is something that we need to avoid, and for that you need to have pharmacovigilance in place. Okay, so when we say pharmacovigilance, it is as per World Health Organization definition, it is a science and an activity relating to detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of the adverse effects or any other drug related problems. So it is actually derived from these two words of Greek and Latin, which is pharmaco, meaning a medicine or a drug, and vigilare, meaning again to keep a watch or to be alert. So that is what we are doing in pharmacovigilance. Again, as we say, pharmacovigilance is a science. So science, as we all know, is looking at the evidences and is looking at collecting the evidences. So as pharmacovigilance, what we are doing is we are trying to collect evidence of the association of the medicine with any untoward occurrence, as we call it in local parlance, side effects. Most of you would have heard of it. Yes, so we use the word side effects. Again, in medicine, we use the term adverse event or adverse reaction. So how are these different? Let's try to understand them. Before that, there are some common terminologies, like I said, that you will come across in pharmacovigilance, like the adverse event and the adverse drug reaction. There is a talk of seriousness or severity of the condition. So what goes wrong after taking a medicine? How serious is it? Okay. And again, we need to do a causality assessment, which is again the role of a medicine person, a pharma person. Any life sciences graduate can do that. However, medicine is something that you need to have. So the preferred role in causality assessment, when we say, whether the drug has caused the event or not, so you would have a person who has the medical background, right? Again, there is a concept of labeling. Now, what is a label? I'm sure most of you, when you buy a product in the market, which is a medicine, you will see there is a folded leaflet inside the product. So that is called as the product information. Yes, that is our labeling. Again, in clinical trials, you have a different label, which is the investigator brochure, right? And which keeps updating based on the studies that are being done in the humans, the clinical trial, reports of any reactions which happen with the medicine. So those are the things that we will capture in pharmacovigilance. We'll try to see whether any new event comes and whether the label, existing label, needs to be updated or not, right? And then if there are any risks which are observed while we market the drug, that is what we need to again address with our activities in pharmacovigilance. So let's look at the activities. Before that, like I said, let's look at adverse, what are the various activities that we do in pharmacovigilance. So the first thing that we usually do is collect a report of an adverse event which has gone wrong. So what is an adverse event? Again, adverse event is anything that untoward happens after taking of a medicine. Again, it may be related, it may not be related to the drug. So for example, if you've taken a medicine, say a medicine like paracetamol, yes, and after taking paracetamol, you move out of the facility, and maybe a healthcare professionals hospital or a nursing home or anywhere, and you step out of the facility and you meet with a road accident. Now, road accident is something that you've never expected to happen. Yes, so it may be related to the drug, it may not be related. Again, that is what we call as an adverse event. And when we establish the relationship using the causality assessment, so then we call it a reaction. So that's the difference between these two. Now, again, in a pharmacovigilance setting, we are required to collect these reports of this adverse event and then do the assessment, and accordingly, if they are found to be related, if they are found to be serious in nature, as we discussed in the terminologies of pharmacovigilance. So seriousness means anything that would be causing a death of the patient, or is life-threatening for the patient, or it requires a patient to be hospitalized, or it prolongs the hospital stay of the patient. Again, it could be something that causes birth defects in unborn children. Again, could be a mother taking the medicine or father taking the medicine. So that could be another seriousness criteria. Again, drugs like can cause permanent disability in a patient, and so which will persist. So these, and there can be some situations which are medically significant. So for example, again, something which was earlier very mild in nature, but now we see an increase in the severity when we market the drug. So maybe in the clinical trials, we've just observed a rash, yes, but when we start to market it, it is becoming a very severe form of reaction, which is, say, urticaria or even anaphylactic reaction. Yes, so in that case, it becomes again a serious event for us. And again, the regulatory requirements, as we were discussing, the regulatory authority requirements in life sciences. So regulatory affairs will deal with such situations, and the regulatory authorities of various countries, like again, where the drug is marketed, they will have these requirements that you need to report these adverse reactions. That means where the association of the drug and the event have been established, those need to be reported again to the authority on an expedited basis. Now, when we say expedited basis, you have a very short timeline in pharmacovigilance, and that is also one of the things that we need to take into account in job roles, because again, reporting of adverse reactions for an expedited reporting would require, say, 15 calendar days, which is again a very short timeline. Yes, and in clinical trial reports, which come from clinical trial essays or the serious adverse events, so those need to be, actually, the death and the life-threatening events need to be reported in 7 calendar days. So the timelines are very strict, stringent, and we need to abide by them. If you don't do that, the products which are being sold can be stopped also by the authority, right? So like I told you, in the COVID-19 vaccine for AstraZeneca, which is, Vaxzevria in Europe, in India, we call it Covishield. Yes. So that vaccine was initially stopped by many authorities in Germany, in France, in Belgium. They had all stopped the sale because of the deaths which were being reported initially. And only after the European Medicine Agency intervened and they reviewed all the data, they found that, okay, there is these are rare events or the reports are happening. However, they still have not been associated with the drug. In all the reports, there were some underlying disease conditions where the patient already had some, heart disease or other issues. Yes. So again, those had to be updated in the label of Vaxzevria in Europe. Only then they have allowed it again to be sold. Yes. So again, we need to do this because, again, like I said, to ensure the safety of the patients. So individual case safety reports is again the name given to these reports that we have for pharmacovigilance, all these adverse event reports, which are submitted because they refer to a subject or to a patient, right? So that is why they're called as individual case safety reports. And when we collect these reports over a period of time, we call them as cumulative data assessment or a aggregate report. So aggregate data analysis is nothing but all these reports that we keep receiving. To have a meaningful interpretation of the data, we need to review them cumulatively over a period of time, and depending upon the requirements of countries. So countries like US require you to give quarterly reports for a product which is approved. Again, that quarterly report has to be submitted from the date of approval, again for first 3 years and annually after that. Whereas in Europe, you will have a report which will include the cumulative data, that is from the date when that active ingredient was approved anywhere in the world for the first time. So from that point onwards, you have to give from the date of your approval all the data, right? And we have to keep giving that 6 monthly data for the first 2 years annually after that, and then you have a 3-yearly interval for the reports. So again, depending upon the countries and the regulations, you have aggregate data or reports prepared. In the clinical trial, again, setup, you have different types of reports. So we have the Development Safety Update Report, or the DSUR, which is an annual report for all the clinical trial serious adverse events. So those are, again, analyzed during the conduct of the trial. Every year, we need to prepare a report at the end of a year and then submit it to the authority. Right? So then this is how we need to prepare in pharmacovigilance individual reports and aggregate reports, again, based on the new adverse reactions which are observed. We will identify an issue and call it a signal. So what is a signal? Anything where you can establish a reaction, that means a reaction which has happened for the first time. So like I said, blood clot related issues with COVID-19 vaccine of AstraZeneca. These were, again, new signals which were not noticed earlier during the trial phase. These were something which is observed for the first time while marketing, right? So again, it could be something which was already known, but you have a change in the frequency of that ADR, or it is a totally new event altogether, right? So such kind of issues, again, are what we need to track. Signal detection, again, why it is important. Like I said earlier, if you would see, drugs like sildenafil citrate, again, Viagra, as we all know by the brand name, or even drugs which are, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, they've all caused some kind of issues while marketing. So there have been cardiac deaths reported with the use of, these drugs, and they were only observed when you started to market the drug. Because like I explained, in the clinical trials, the exposure doesn't happen. But when you market the drug, they reach out to millions of patients. Yes. And so then you will observe the rarer events, which will not have showed up in a clinical trial, right? So in the signal detection, that is what we are trying to do. Again, risk management planning, which is all these new signals that you notice. So how do we manage them? How do we address them? Are we able to update our label and just address it? Is it enough? Or do we need to do anything more beyond just writing it in the label? Say, for instance, a drug, you've all heard about a drug, which is thalidomide, which was there is a thalidomide tragedy, which was a trigger point for many of these safety regulations to have come up. Now, thalidomide was a drug which was touted to be a very safe drug for morning sickness. They used to promote it, and they said it was safe in even pregnant women without even testing it in them, right? But later on, it actually resulted in birth defects in children, and because of that, that drug had to be, the children who were born without limbs or with immobile limbs, shortened limbs, various congenital anomalies, right? So because of that, this kind of a risk should be addressed at the very beginning. So now, even now, thalidomide is used, but the reason for using it is now we are using it in cancer. Yes. Again, still the risk has not gone away. That means the birth defects which can happen with thalidomide still exist. But then what do we do in such a case? So now what is being done is that when you enroll a patient in a study on thalidomide, you are required to do some risk management. That means you need to ensure that they are using contraceptive measures, at least 2 contraceptive measures, and you need to do negative pregnancy test before the enrollment, during the conduct of study, and even after the conduct, right? So this is how we are managing a risk related to a drug. Again, like I said, no drug per se is safe in totality. So as we all know, again, we consider paracetamol as a safe drug, but even a drug like paracetamol in rarer of conditions can cause Stevens-Johnson syndrome, can cause hepatic impairment. Yes, a lot of reports have come up, right? So in these cases, again, what we need to do, we need to monitor the safety of the drugs, right? And again, propose any specific actions related to that risk, whether we can manage that risk in our routine activities. So our routine activities are the labels, update to the labels that is done, the product information that goes into the carton of the product, right? So updating that on a regular frequency, or doing special activities. Like I said, for a drug which causes teratogenicity, you may have to do a registry of the patients. You may have to enroll them in a clinical study first. And then you may have to do negative pregnancy tests. You may have to ask them to use contraception. You may have to educate them. Yes. And track. Okay. So these are the things, again, which are done additionally, and they are a part of the risk management planning. Okay. So this is the end-to-end pharmacovigilance life cycle. Again, that is from individual reports to aggregate reports to looking at a new signal and then managing the risks. Again, like I said, with different activities. Okay. So again, the risk management planning has different requirements in different countries. US, you have a risk evaluation and mitigation strategy. Again, when we talk of Europe, we have a risk management plan, or the EU RMP as it's called. So you have different requirements based on the country and specific formats that you need to prepare, right? So training on the pharmacovigilance regulations will help you again in preparing these documents and submitting it to the authorities, and in ensuring the safety of the medicine, right? Okay, so like I said, again, these are the different processes which are involved in the pharmacovigilance domain. You have the case processing or the individual case safety reports. They are going into your case intake. You can get these cases from different sources, from call centers where the patients will call, or the doctors or the pharmacists or the nurses, they can call and report any adverse reaction with the drug. You can get these reports from clinical trials. So the clinical trial serious adverse events. Again, like I said, reports can come spontaneously. That means they will come on their own from the patients, from consumers or their relatives, or even their legal advisors. So they can report these cases directly to the company which is marketing the drug. Yes, or they may go to the regulatory authority, and then the regulatory authority will direct them back to the company to analyze those reports, right? So again, and many of these reports are published by the researchers, by the doctors, by the pharmacists in medical journals. So literature searches are also required to be done by the companies to analyze the reports and then process them. Again, this is going into our database, which is required to be maintained by companies. So most companies have a subscription based database, which is many databases are available, safety databases like Argus or RSG or Safety Easy or Tara PV or 24/7. There are several providers, again, third-party providers, which will give you validated databases. Again, with our courses that we do in CleanMinds, we also train you on how to use these databases. You will get an access to the database. You also learn how to process the cases in the database, right? Again, there are several steps involved. I'm not going into the nitty-gritty of the processing of cases. However, just broadly, you need to enter the case. So you need to have pharmacovigilance associates who will enter the case, and then you will have senior specialists who will review those cases, or the quality check will be done, right? And this quality check will be then medically reviewed by, again, medical professionals. So pharmacists, doctors will perform the medical review of the case. Again, once you have analyzed the cases, they will go for reporting to the regulatory authority. Like I said, so India, you have the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, and you have the Pharmacovigilance Program of India, where these reports will go. Similarly, US, you have the US FDA, Europe, you have the European Medicine Agency, and the national competent authorities, where you can report these cases. Again, the aggregate reports will be analyzed from these individual cases, and then those will go for periodic report compilation and then submitted to the authority. Similarly, the signal analysis will be done, and the benefit risk assessment and the mitigation strategies. So like I said, the risk management activities that you need to do. So these will all be a part of your pharmacovigilance activities, right? Okay. Now, again, as I was explaining to you earlier, the difference between an adverse event and an adverse reaction. So any untoward occurrence in a patient that happens, which may or may not have a relationship, is called an event. Whereas when we have established that relationship, okay, either by doing the medical assessment or by the reporter, if they have assessed that this is related. So in any of these cases, we consider that as a reaction. Again, there are different names given to, you have the suspected adverse drug reaction or a SADR given for the ADR. And similarly, for adverse event, you can have an adverse experience or adverse effect. All these are reported. Yes. Again, causality, like I said, may or may not be established. Okay. With an adverse event, whereas for a reaction, it is always related. Okay. So again, apart from this, within pharmacovigilance domain, we are also required to do, as part of good pharmacovigilance practices, which are set forth by the European Medicine Agency, the MHRA, FDA also have their own set of requirements. So most authorities want you to do your own pharmacovigilance audits, which are done again by quality professionals trained on pharmacovigilance. So these can be internal within the company, or they can be hired from outside as third party by the companies. Again, the independent auditing will be done of all the processes, whether it is the case, individual cases which are entered in the database, or the aggregate reports which are prepared and submitted, or the signal detection that we are doing, or the risk management. So everything comes under the ambit of a pharmacovigilance audit. And so this is also one of the domains where you will need people who are certified in quality assurance, ISO certifications, all quality assurance related documentation is required. And again, these are required to be maintained by all the companies. They, as part of the regulations, they have to regularly update the audits in their pharmacovigilance system master file, which is a requirement again in Europe and in many other parts of the world. So Europe has a regulation called as a good pharmacovigilance practice, which is followed by many countries across the globe because it is a comprehensive regulation. Because Europe was, again, as we all know, confederation of various countries, members who are a part of the European Union. And so they had come up with this regulation, which is very exhaustive in nature, right? And that is why most countries, whether it is Australia or it is New Zealand or the Southeast Asian countries, or even Arabic UAE countries, the CIS and the Russian countries, they've all adapted to the GVP requirements. You will also find the reference to GVP even in Indian regulations. So that is how most countries have adapted their requirements, and companies are required to do these audits on themselves or their partners or their vendors, and outsource these to, again, which is outsourced companies or even academic institutions where pharmacovigilance activities are being conducted, right? So again, you will have these done over few years. It can be that you have a new database that you have set up, or a company has undergone a merger or has been acquired by any other company, right? So in those cases, you will need to also do regular audits of the company, which are called as due diligence. Okay, so in almost all cases, it is done by having pharmacovigilance audit experts who will go to the location. Nowadays, we also, after the COVID era, have remote audits. However, still the preferred mode of operation is that the person is required to go to the company pharmacovigilance site and perform full-fledged review of the documents and procedures related to pharmacovigilance, have face-to-face interviews, look at the SOPs of the company, operations, signaling, the labeling, like I said, all these things are looked at in pharmacovigilance. Again, these visits can take up to few weeks at times, or several days, or even months, depends on how big the operations of a company is, right? So for a company like, say, Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson, the audit can take several days, right? So as a result of these reports and findings, the company has to again prepare some corrective actions, preventive actions, to look at the deviations or gaps which are there while processing. And then even the authorities in Europe, in US, they will come and do the inspection of the company. Again, during the inspections, if some findings are observed, or it is found that you are not operating pharmacovigilance in a proper way, they can even put fines, they can put your product under suspension. So actions can be taken, right? And so that is why they will look at your audits or your inspections, whatever internal audits you have done as a company, or the inspections which have been done in the past, to look at what areas or what gaps are still there in your processing. Are you complying with the regulations or the requirements to report the cases in time or not? So all these things are a part of, again, like I said, pharmacovigilance. Okay. So as I was telling earlier, this is the right choice for most people in life sciences background. It has been growing, over the years. So global pharmacovigilance market is anticipated to again increase US dollar to 62 million in 2027. Again, if we compare that to 2018, 151 million. So it is growing exponentially, and pharmacovigilance and drug safety market is growing, like I said, at almost like 6.4%. Okay. when we talk of, again, the positions or career in pharmacovigilance, so you will have levels, and as you climb up the ladder or as you grow in experience, you will have, various roles within the organization. So starting positions of associate or executive, a trainee level at the beginning, and then associate, and then you will have a team leader or a assistant manager, and then you will have managers, senior manager, project managers, associate directors or VP or the general managers, and then the CEO. So as you climb up, the starting range of a person who starts could be from 2 to 5 lakhs per annum to anywhere close to 25 to 75 lakhs per annum, right? So that's how the career progression will happen in this domain. Again, main activities in pharmacovigilance for professionals can be, like I said, recording and reporting the adverse reactions from the healthcare professionals or consumers, conducting interviews with patients or healthcare professionals, call centers are maintained, developing knowledge of products. So all these things, reconciliations are done, entry of the cases in the database, safety database, compiling of periodic reports, writing of serious adverse event reports, again flagging up any signals or early warnings of adverse effects, minimizing the risks, completing the safety audits, and working on clinical trials of new drugs. So these are various activities which can be required for pharmacovigilance professionals. Like I said, opportunities are immense. So people trained in pharmacovigilance can find excellent employment in pharmaceutical companies or MNCs, even biotech companies. And so all these vaccines which come up from biotech companies are now hiring people. Contract research organizations which provide services to the pharma companies. Regulatory authorities also are looking at people trained in pharmacovigilance. Clinical research organizations, like I said, many of CROs hire, so IQVIA and many others would need pharmacovigilance trained professional. Units in various centers across our country, also in medical colleges, hospitals, will require people who are trained in pharmacovigilance, because again we have nodal centers, zonal centers, which will collect these areas from various colleges and then report it to the regulatory authority in India. Again, you have knowledge processing companies like Accenture, Covance, Cognizant, Wipro, TCS, Apsar, so various other organizations. And people can make their career in various companies like, Reddy's and Zydus and Clintech, Clingene, Eli Lilly, Lupin, Glaxo, various other companies, Lambda, you have Matrix Laboratories, companies, pharma companies like Novartis, Roche, Pfizer, right? So Novo Nordisk, again, like I said, IQVIA, Quintiles, the Reliance Life Sciences, Ranbaxy, which is now merged into Sun Pharma. You have Zero, which is a Clinifarm CRO, various other companies which offer you roles in pharmacovigilance. So I am sure that all these information is something which will be beneficial for all of you. Again, as part of our courses, we'll be updating you on various safety regulations, certifications which are required, and the courses which are available on pharmacovigilance domain. So it will be a very beneficial session for all of you. If you decide to join these courses, they will be a fueling for your future career options in pharma or in pharmacovigilance domain. So that's it from my side on